The Appian Way, or Via Appia, was originally commissioned by the Roman censor Appius Clodius Caecus, for whom it is named, in the year 312 BC. Beginning in Rome and stretching south all the way to the Adriatic Sea, the road was built for the express purpose of sending Roman soldiers and supplies into the surrounding territories during the Samnite Wars. After expanding further into the Italian peninsula and establishing several colonies such as Terracina, Menternus, and Sinuessa, it became necessary to construct the fastest possible route between Rome and these new conquests. The original segment of the road was 132 miles and headed southeast, connecting Rome from the Forum Romanum, passing Norba and the Pontine marshes to Capua. Eventually, with even more colonies and conquests, the Appian Way was extended to Beneventum, then Venusium, then Tarentum, and finally to Brundisium on the coast of the Adriatic Sea. The ports of Brundisium were an important termination to the road, as the city was a launching point to Greece and the east. Beginning at a humble 132 miles, the Via Appia, at its completion, stretched nearly from coast to coast at 364 miles. The military highway was paved systematically in several layers of durable stone and mortar, topped with large slabs of flat interlocking stone. Procopius of Caesarea once praised censor Appius Clodius for that he put them together without lime or other binding material, and they stand so united and so solidly together that anyone who sees them cannot believe that they are merely set one beside the other, but must think that they form a single whole. Construction of the Via Appia varied between straight and zigzagging segments, depending upon the terrain. The builders of the road did not hesitate to cut into mountainsides to keep the road as straight as possible. After its military uses were exhausted, the road became a central trade route, as it was flanked by agricultural regions and supported fine imports from the east such as silks, spices, and precious jewels. To accommodate the huge numbers of travelers, several service posts were established along the road. Mutationes, or stations for rest and changing horses, were placed about every 10 miles. Other accommodations included mansiones or stationes, which were small inns for overnight guests, and milestones, marking the distance from Rome and often commemorating important figures and events. Some of these posts were built at pre-existing villages, while others laid the foundations for future cities. Beyond the Via Appia's functionality for the Republic and later Empire, it was also a place to display the glory of her various patrons and splendors of Rome. Sites along the road include the Circus of Maxentius, the Temple of Hercules, and many mausoleums and tombs of the ancient noble and wealthy. The Via Appia was a source of pride and a center of culture and history, serving as the inspiration for dozens of artists, writers, and poets through the centuries. It was for its superiority of construction, its role in military operations and trade, and its beauty and cultural significance that the Via Appia became known as the Regina Viarum, or the Queen of Roads. The Appian Way begins at the Republican walls of ancient Rome at the Porta Capena, which date back to the 4th century BC. It then passes through the Porta Appia at the Aurelian Wall, dating to around 270 AD. As the dead were not allowed to be buried within city limits, the tombs of many ancient and noble families begin to line either side of the road beyond these walls. Among them are the tomb of the Scipios, the church of the Domine Quo Vadis, and the tomb of Cecilia Metella. The tomb of the Scipios remains one of the most famous sepulchres along the Via Appia, for the glorious members of the Scipio family entombed within it. Further on, the church of the Domine Quo Vadis is tied to the story of the Apostle Peter, who was escaping persecution at the hands of Nero. Jesus was said to have appeared to Peter, and Peter asked him, "Domine Quo Vadis?" meaning, "Lord, where goest thou?" To which the Lord responded, "Venio iterum crucifige," meaning, "I've come to be crucified a second time." Peter then turned back for Rome, where he was martyred. In his diary of his time spent in Italy, Goethe once wrote, "Today I visited the nymph Egeria, the circus of Caracalla, The ruined tombs along the Via Appia and the tomb of Metella, which made me realize for the first time what solid masonry means. These people built for eternity. They omitted nothing from their calculations except the insane fury of the destroyers to whom nothing was sacred. The tomb of Cecilia Metella is considered to be the grandest sepulchre on the Appian Way. Made of solid marble and reaching to a height of 20 meters, it was converted into a fortress in the Byzantine era. The tomb's grandeur can be attributed to Cecilia's high social status, as little is known about Cecilia herself. She was the daughter of Quintus Metellus Criticus and the wife of Crassus, whose father had crushed the slave rebellion of 72 AD, led by Spartacus. Continuing to move south along the Via Appia, the city of Terracina rests at the spot that the Ausoni Mountains cuts into the Pontine Plain. The Romans valued Terracina for its strategic location, and in 329 BC it became known as Colonia Anxuriana. Here, atop Monte Sant'Angelo, is the sanctuary of Jupiter Anxur. The site hosts marvelous panoramic views of the Pontine and Fondi plains and includes 2 temples for worship. One of the temples was dedicated to the worship of the goddess Feronia, who is associated with nature, fertility, and health. The other, more major temple has been erroneously attributed to Jupiter Anxur, who is known as Terracina's god and protector. Instead, it is more likely that the temple was dedicated to the cult of Venus, who was associated with commerce and wine. After Terracina, the Via Appia opens into the ancient city of Capua, the original termination of the road built by Appius Clodius. Founded in roughly the 9th century BC, Capua was one of the most important cities in ancient Italy and known to be fabulously wealthy. Capua is the home of many important ancient monuments, and among them is the Mithraeum and the amphitheater, which is perfectly preserved and rivals the fame of the Flavian Amphitheater in Rome. Thousands of spectators witness bloody gladiator battles and fights between men and beasts. The amphitheater also housed the gladiator school, where Spartacus was trained before he led perhaps the most famous slave rebellion in all of history, the Third Servile War. In the end, the rebellion was doomed in the face of the Roman Republic's army, and 6,000 survivors were crucified along the stretch of the Via Appia from Rome to Capua, to serve as a warning of justice delivered by the all-powerful Republic. Though the Appian Way was famed for its flow of trade and cultural patrimony, it was also a site of cruelty and dark mortality. Passing by Capua, the Via Appia travels through the scorching sun of the Italian countryside, dotted with harsh-looking olive trees, vineyards, and smoky landscapes. At Aclenum, the existence of a slimy pond and the acrid smell of the earth led Virgil to write, "Here Pluto pants for breath from out his cell, and opens wide the grinning jaws of hell." Moving eastwards, however, the landscape becomes less harrowing as the Via Appia approaches Tarentum and finally Brindisium. The ancient road terminates at the edge of the Adriatic Sea with a dazzling monument of 2 columns that once soared over the coastline. Brindisium was the bridge to the east and a fitting end to the glorious Appian Way. Through the many centuries, the Via Appia has seen war and tremendous wealth, soldiers, merchants, the hopeful, and the destitute. In the Middle Ages, it was the road of Christian pilgrimage. The Via Appia was itself an actor in its own history, helping to shape the fates of the Roman Republic and Empire, as well as the civilizations that came after them. A true Regina Viarum, the Via Appia was and still the curator of all the art, knowledge, history, and culture that has traversed its well-worn paths.